Today, I'm speaking with John Ruhlin, the founder of Giftology. Lots of ideas, lots of energy, absolutely amazing human being. Enjoy my conversation with John. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. And today, I have a legend that can talk to me. I'm so happy. He's absolutely phenomenal. I think there's two types of people in the world, those who knows him and those he knows. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only John Ruhlin. How are you, my friend?
Eric, I'm fantastic, man. Thank you for making me feel like $1 million.
Well, I don't want to downgrade you from where you are.
Oh man, you're too much.
No, yeah. I'm for those who don't know that, I guess a lot of people. I'm talking about serendipity of life. So we're both member of EO. You came to speak at the EO conference in South Florida, and I was telling you how sad I was or frustrated I was with people that are only coming to you because they hope to get something out of you. And I was kind of frustrated with that. And then you told me, have you heard about MMT? So next thing you know, you got me in touch with Jason Gaignard, and this is the most amazing community, thanks to you. And so I want to publicly acknowledge and thank you again for that. But most importantly, you came to speak about your journey, about Giftology and what gets you there. And I think that's a very fascinating story. So if you don't mind, starting from where everything started, and what is your story?
Yeah. Well, first off, Jason's fantastic. And I met Jason through EO. So it's funny how things come full circle. I mean, EO, I've been a member for 14 years. It's the books you read and the people you surround yourself is who you become. And obviously we both believe that and try to be very intentional. And Jason's a mutual friend, but his community is fantastic. My journey, I didn't grow up around the right people or wealthy people or country club people. I grew up on a farm milking goats in Ohio, middle of nowhere, town of 300 people. I grew up on 47 acres, really poor as a church mouse. And I wasn't poor like, third world poor, but I was poor. Like we didn't, I was on the free lunch program, if that tells you like the income level that we were at. So I learned very early on, if you want something, you got to go work for it. And I didn't like being poor. And so I was going to go make my mom proud and be a doctor. I went to undergrad, got straight A's all through school, was going to go to be a DO or a chiropractor. And my life changed because of a mentor, because of a relationship. So I'm dating this girl. Her dad is a rainmaking attorney, and he's radically generous. When you're poor, you see somebody generous, you're like, what is going on? Like he would find deals on noodles, buy a semi-load. Everybody at church the next Sunday is getting cases of noodles. I'm like, Paul, that was like 30, 40 grand. Like, are you insane? And it wasn't tactical for him. It's just how he showed up. He showed up in uncommon ways for relationships. And I was like, I want to be Paul when I'm 60. I'm 20. I start mimicking him as I'm selling these crazy Cutco knives. I interned with Cutco to pay for med school. I had no desire to be at Cutco, but my fourth appointment, I pitched Paul, my girlfriend's dad, the most awkward conversation in the world. I'm horrible at sales. And I'm thinking maybe he'll have mercy on me. He buys a set for himself and his 3 unmarried daughters. And dropped like $4,000 on knives. He's like, John, I want to help you hit your goals. What else? I don't know what else I could buy though. These things are awesome. So I pitched him a week later, second time pitching your girlfriend's dad, knives. I said, Paul, you're always giving things away to your clients, whatever else, they're CEOs. Cutco makes like these $100, $200 pocket knives, handmade in the US, blah, blah, blah. Would you want to give those out? And he changed my life forever. He's like, I don't want to give away pocket knives. I want to give away paring knives. I'm like, why would you give somebody like $100, $200 like a kitchen tool? Like, that's weird, Paul. Like, these are all dudes. Like, I'm very, at the time, I'm country bumpkin chauvinist. Like, why would you give a bunch of, guys that are running $1 million, $1 billion companies, lumber yards, home builders, those kind of things? And he said, John, the reason I have more referrals, access, deal flow, everything, it all comes down to relationships. And if you take care of the family in business, everything else takes care of itself. So that was the mind-blowing moment. It wasn't about the stupid knife, although to this day, we still do millions of dollars in the knives we own an agency, a done-for-you gifting agency. But I started to mimic that to different relationships. I would send, a couple knives, $300-$400 is a lot for a college kid to invest in a relationship. Yeah. Of like a CEO I'd want to get a meeting with of like an insurance company, $200 million company. I mail it off out of my dorm room. I get the meeting. And the assistant was the one that called me. And I walk into this boardroom in the one suit I have on, scared to death. And the CEO comes in his 60s, Mr. Smith. He's like, "Are you the John Ruhlin that sent me the knives?" I said, "Yes, sir." He's like, "Man, I thought you'd be like in your 50s, some seasoned sales executive. Like, I'm confused. Are you here to sell me knives?" I'm like, "No, sir. I'm here to help you and your top 10,000 or your top 1,000 sales reps love on your top 10,000 relationships." And his jaw hit the ground. He's like, "You're good." So I walked out of there with a PO for 1,000 knife sets. And, long story short is, Cutco's worked with about 2 million sales reps over 70 years. And a lot of times people are like, "John, like, this is a woo idea. Who cares?" I'm like, out of 2 million sales reps in 7 years, we became the number one distributor in the history of the company globally for Cutco by what we now call Giftology, which is not a gifting conversation. It's really a relationship building. Like, if you want referrals, if you want deal flow, if you want retention of your employees, you have to love on them in a way that inspires them to want to advocate on your behalf, whether that's open doors and sell for you or stay on board and help you hit your goals. Like, it comes down to, how do you communicate and love on your relationships? And most people think they're a 7 out of 10 on relationship building, and they give tchotchkes with their logo on it, or fruit baskets, or the same stupid stuff everybody does. And so I learned from Paul early on, you got to go all in, show these relationships something. And if you do that, it comes back to you 100-fold. It's one of the best marketing, sales, referral tools on the planet. But it all started with these crazy Cutco knives and, goat milk and farm kid in desperation to pay for med school.
You became a doctor?
No, I dropped out of med school. I was like, you know what? I'll get my undergrad. That's good. And I don't want to go to school for another 8 years. I was going to go be a doctor because I wanted to make money. I didn't want to be poor, and I wanted to make my mom proud. So I was doing it for the wrong reasons, really. Like, it wasn't, I like people, but I didn't necessarily like science that way. Now, to this day, like, I'm now into like biohacking and stuff. So I kind of comes full circle, right? Like, some of the things that you're interested in at some level. But no, I mean, we now own consulting agency to teach people how to do this. We own, write books, speak on this all over the world. And then the core of our business is, if you want to love on relationships at scale and do it thoughtfully, the handwritten notes, all the outsourcing of that, we take that on for whether it's solopreneurs or, Fortune 500 companies. And how do you send a love bomb to 200 people and have people cry and want to, be moved emotionally? That doesn't happen on accident by sending, swag and cases of wine and gift cards and trophies and silly stuff.
Absolutely. And you say something very interesting that many people forget about, is that it doesn't help to send something with your logo. It helps to send something which is personal with the name of the person. How did you discover that? Because quite frankly, John, you're amazing. You're very successful. You make it sound like it's easy, but it didn't come overnight. You're another example of this overnight success that took years in the building. So how did you discover that?
I mean, a lot of it was just trial and error. Like, I think, you would give somebody a gift and it had Giftology on it, like, people would respond one way. And if you took the energy and effort and you're meeting with the CEO and you put his logo on it and his name, I learned because my first deal was with Paul, the attorney. He was giving it out like candy, but that was who he was. The next deal didn't come for another 12 months. So I sold people a ton of knives for their personal use, but I was striking out left and right on getting people. I thought everybody's going to buy knives as gifts. Like, this is the best, gift, the best relationship building strategy. Like, our return on relationships, 100x, all the stuff. Nobody cared. Because I was selling knives. But when they started to see, when I started to notice when they saw their logo on it, they could visualize, oh my gosh, they saw how they felt because it was personal to them. So the personalization was just as important as the thing. You can give a Rolex to somebody, but if you put dominoes on the Rolex watch, guess what? It's not a gift anymore. It's a promotional product. And so many people think they're gifting, but really what they're doing is they're doing transactional things. They're giving a gift after a referral. That's not a gift. That's an incentive. You don't get somebody to cry. You give them something after a referral. Somebody signs $1 million contract. Nobody's like crying. You give them something. You show up for a relationship just because you were thinking of them, and you personalize it to them. Not you put your logo on it. It's a manipulation to try to turn them into a billboard. And so I started to notice that there was a recipe. And like anything, you bake bread, you can get all the ingredients right, but if you miss one, like yeast, small, you don't get bread. If you decide to make lobster bisque from scratch, spend 12 hours boiling it and picking it from the shell. And as you're serving the lobster bisque, if the fly flies into it, guess what? Nobody cares you spent 12 hours on it. All they focus on is the fly or the hair in the soup. It's one little thing. But so many people will say, I did Giftology, John, to my employees, my clients, my part, whatever, it didn't work. And I'm like, did you follow the recipe? And they're like, well, we did Giftology-ish. And I'm like, you either follow the recipe or you don't. And if you want somebody, if you want to put $1 into this ATM machine and get $10 back out, there's a certain process. There's a certain system. And if you cut corners on it, which is what most people do, bigger companies are the worst at it, but even small companies are like, I don't have time to handwrite the notes. I don't have time to personalize and put the person's name on it. I don't have time to find out what the wife or husband's name is. And I'm like, that if you don't have time to do that, then don't expect to get, 1,000x return on it, because it's the time, energy, and effort. It's not the thought that counts. That's an excuse to give a sucky gift. It's an excuse to do something mediocre and lame. It's the thoughtful thought. If you want somebody to be moved, to tears or to be inspired to open doors for you and become an unpaid sales rep, that does not happen on accident. That happens because you made them feel something that they can't unfeel. And the way God's wired us is we want to reciprocate and do nice things for people that do things for us with no strings attached. Yeah. If you give to get, you like that, you can feel that. If you give open-handed, of course, we're running a for-profit business. So are you, and so is everybody else. We want good things to happen. We want referrals. We want profit. But so many people, they misconstrue what we're talking about and they do it and they're like, it didn't work. And I'm like, no, you didn't follow it. You didn't follow for the intention of it. You didn't follow through on the details of it. You sent some stuff, some crap from Amazon, and nobody needs more stuff. We're all choking on all of our stuff. We're going to Goodwill in record numbers, getting rid of all of the crap, the trophies and paperweights and knickknacks and tchotchkes and swag. Like all of that ends up at the landfill or at Goodwill because we don't need more stuff. But that's why I use the word love bomb or artifact. If somebody gives us a thoughtful, over the top, personal to us and has story and meaning, we'll tell that story 1,000 times. Yep. Like that, there's a difference, between a gift, a promotional item, swag, and an artifact or a love bomb.
Absolutely. And similarly, thinking about that, when I had my corporate event company back then in Belgium, I was creating moments that people cannot duplicate. To your point, they tell about it. It's the stories. I wish you would be passionate when you speak about that, John. It's just
I know, man. I get on my soapbox a little bit, but I think that gifting and generosity and love comes across in the business world of like this eat dog world of like it's woo woo, it's soft, it's weak, it's a check the box, it's a nice to. And if you look at the companies that are crushing it, like a Gary Vaynerchuk, he's all about kindness and love and like he's all about, his book, Jab, 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 Right Hook is give, then ask. A guy just published a book recently, and I didn't realize he included us in a few dozen places in the book called Save Your Asks. He runs like a 400-person ad agency out of Atlanta. And, he's like, you should show up for somebody 10 to 20 times before you ask ever. Yeah. Most people don't even show up once or twice with anything of value, let alone 10 or 20 times. And so I think that people don't understand that the people that are really doing well and loving their business and life and relationships this is an underpinning. It's like, whether you're a CEO, whether you're a sales rep, whether you're in Africa, whether you're in Florida, like we all just want to be appreciated and loved and acknowledged. And like, we all crave that because that's the way God's wired us. And we just don't understand that like there is a methodology to this. And oh, by the way, Southwest Airlines, one of the most profitable airlines. What's their symbol? A heart, love. Starbucks, they're all about, they're not a cheap cup of coffee. They're not perfect. I don't agree with everything that they do politically or whatever else. But the companies that are leading with love and taking care of people and trying to put people first and actually not just talking about it, but actually freaking doing it, are oftentimes the ones that are performing over time at the highest level because they actually are putting their time, energy, and money where their mouth is. Chick-fil-A, great example. They perfect? No. But by gosh, they're running circles around McDonald's because they lead with love, care, attention
with love, care, and purpose. I mean, they close on Sunday because it's their belief. And they don't go out of that. That's their
and they
purpose.
Destroy everybody on the day that most people go out for fast food or go out to eat the most. They're closed on because it's a Sabbath day, right? It's their holy day.
Yeah.
And most people, that'd be like, committing Harry Carey. It's like a gifting company that won't allow you to send Christmas or holiday gifts. It's the dumbest thing in the world on paper, but if it's actually the best thing for the people or the company or the leaders, that's why we don't allow companies to send gifts at Christmas. Why? Because it's lighting $100, $1,000 bills on fire. Chick-fil-A, like, our people need rest. They need to go, whether they're a person of faith or not, they need time with their families. And because of that, they put their time, energy, and money where their mouth is. Most people, oh, I'm generous, or I love my employees. Show me. How are you investing in your employees? Show me how you're investing differently in your clients. Don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Show me with your pocketbook and your calendar. If you don't really invest in the people are like, oh, I appreciate my employees. I gave them a polo shirt with my logo on it. Like, that's not a gift. That's uniform at best.
Yes.
Like, that's not a gift. Nobody's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got a jacket with my company's logo on it. Like, are you kidding me? No, anyway, I'm sorry. I'm getting a lot.
No, don't be sorry. No, you're absolutely on point. And by the way, what you say about people and taking care of people, and they don't teach that in a business school, and it's probably the first thing that should be taught there. But that's another debate. Anyway, I heard you sharing stories over the years, and there's two in particular that I would love you to share with everyone. The first is how you get this major basketball team as a customer.
Yeah.
And the second one is how you convince a very well-known speaker and author and consultant, and how you you learn about the type of clothes he loves to wear. So let's talk about basketball first.
Yeah. So I always wanted to have I wanted to work with pro sports teams because I never got to I went to like one basketball. Even though I love basketball, I went and watched Jordan play against the Cavs. I was obsessed with sports, but basketball in particular. We started working with a consultant in the industry, and we started comping gifts for her to give to different executives that were clients of hers. And one of them was Alex Martins, the CEO of the Orlando Magic. And so the assistant reaches out to me directly and says, hey, John, we want to order these. Here you do these crazy love bombs, these gifts, knives in particular. We order a couple hundred knife sets to give around the NBA. I thought it was a prank call initially. Turned out it was real. So like most people, like they're ordering a lot of gifts from us, from our agency to send out to all their relationships. So partners, sponsors, other executives. And so I start sending Alex. I built him like the full, $5,000 knife set for Alex and his wife. But because he's cutting the checks, right? He's the decision maker. That's how most people play the game when they're building relationships, is who's the real decision maker. They'll take them to Pebble Beach or Africa or whatever. Everybody else is left in the cold. Our belief is the inner circle matters just as much, if not more, than the person who's cutting the checks. It's their assistant, their team, their spouse, their kids, their pets. It's the people around the people. That's how you can invest, $100,000, but it's like you invested $1 million. And so I started sending Cheyenne, the assistant of the Orlando Magic, same knife set, the same wine tools, the same leather goods. Every time something went to Alex, it wasn't the junior varsity level gift. It was the exact same thing. This went on for 2 years. I didn't ask for anything. I find out I'm speaking at this big event in Orlando. I call Cheyenne. I said, hey, I've never met you. I've never met Alex. Did I get 5 minutes? She's like, sure. No problem. No matter what he's doing. She calls me back. What are you doing the entire afternoon? I'm thinking, I got 5 meetings, but this is the Orlando Magic. And she's like, clear your afternoon. And I said, okay. I'm like, we're going to have this brainstorming session, a bro session with me and Alex. So I go down there, meet Cheyenne. She gives me a big hug. Alex comes in, shakes my hand. He's like, everybody in the NBA does basketballs, jerseys, nets. We're sending out these knives and people are still buzzing about it years later. We love it. It's so unique. It's so different. It's so personal. You're doing a great job. And leaves 2 minutes later. And I'm like pissed because I'm like, I was supposed to be with them for like 3 hours. Cheyenne takes me down the hallway and she's smiling because she can tell I'm faking happy, but I'm pissed. And walks me into the boardroom, and there's 6 people around the table I've never met before. And usually when you work with a pro sports team, like, Pepsi pays $100 million to be the official soft drink of the NBA. Like it's pay to play. And we've always said our service and strategy and product and everything was better and was worth paying full price. I'm not discounting it to get the logo. I'm charging because I'm a small company. I'm not trying to so there's usually a kiss the ring mentality of like, oh, you want to work with the Jaguars? Okay, you got to pay us and give us the product for free. So all the people stand up and come and give me a hug, and I've never met these people. I'm like, what is going on? This is weird.
Where's the camera?
Yeah, where's the camera? And Cheyenne sits down, they introduce themselves. I'm in charge of sponsorship. I'm in charge of suites. I'm in charge of this. And the one gal says, John, for the last 2 years, we've heard your name get brought up 45 times at least from Cheyenne. She won't shut up about John Ruhlin this and Giftology that. We know you're good enough for Alex and Cheyenne. Can you just show us what you have so we can pick something out and start buying it? And I was like, come again? They're like, yeah, we just show us what you got. So we talked for 3 hours. We're talking back and forth all this stuff. I walked out there. I'm like, this is going nowhere. Like, this is too good to be true. This is going to die on the vine. No way. Sure enough, 4 months later, first 6-figure deal with any pro sports team. And to this day, it's top 20 margin that we've ever had. Why did we get that deal? Not because of Alex. Alex is great. He's a great client. It was because we treated the inner circle, the assistant, at the same level as the CEO. And my original mentor, Paul, just did that naturally. The receptionist, the janitor, didn't matter. He just treated people with respect and kindness. And so I think a lot of times when people are like, yeah, we did Giftology, I'm like, do you know the assistant's name? We're going to do them. They're like, I don't know who that is. No, they don't make the decision. I'm like, you're dumb. They actually influence the decision more than you'll ever influence the decision. Yep. The junior level marketing person, treat them, because guess what? Not only will they have influence, but eventually they'll be the CMO in 10 years somewhere else.
Yeah.
They will remember who treated them with love and respect early. Absolutely. The event planners, same way. I treat event planners like gold. I've never booked with a speaking bureau ever. Guess who gets me all of the speaking gigs? And in some cases, before the pandemic, we booked almost at a 6-figure realm to speak for an hour. 6 figures, no bureau. How? Other people, event planners, other speakers, other clients, other CEOs have gone out of their way to become sales reps for our brand. But it's usually the event planner. It's usually the assistant. It's usually somebody that's never treated with respect. And we don't treat them like a pawn. We treat them at the same level. And because of that, the outpouring of that oftentimes ends up being something interesting or good. And so,
love it.
Inner circle,
essential. Absolutely. And sometimes the decision maker, especially if you know what she, or in this case, he loves to wear.
Oh, yeah. So the short version of that is I joined EO. I barely qualified. I hear the speaker, Cameron Harold, who's written like multiple books. He's like the CEO whisperer. I hear him speak at an EO event, and I'm like, I want him not just as a client. I want him as a mentor, and I can't afford his like $20,000 a month coaching. I want him as a friend. I want him as a referral source. I just want to be in his galaxy. Yeah. So I invite him to dinner and a ball game when he's coming to Cleveland to speak, thinking we'll go to Morton's, we'll go to the Cavs game, lower level LeBron. This is like 14 years ago. His response was the most underwhelming response ever. I guess I'll go. I don't have anything else going on. But in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, Cameron goes on 100 of these. A, he doesn't like basketball. B, he goes to 100 dinners. Everybody's whining and dining him all the time. Dinner, ball game, round of golf, who cares? Everybody does the same playbook when they're relationship building, and it's just noise. It's not wrong, but it's table stakes stuff. It's not like you're going to blow somebody's mind because you took them out for $1,000 dinner in Vegas. Everybody does that. Everybody takes people to Pebble Beach, or everybody does the typical dog and pony show. That's why I love your once in a lifetime experiences. If you're going to do an experience, do it at a once in a lifetime level so that they can't even go buy it. And now they're going to tell that story for the next 20 years. We do the same thing on the physical side. So I'm like, okay, Cameron's obviously could care less about the basketball game. What's he going to do when he's in town? So I'm like, Cameron, what are you going to do while you're in town? And he said, probably go shopping. And I'm like, this is my angle. I said, where are you going to shop at? And he said, I'm from Canada. There's not a ton of Brooks Brothers in Canada. I'm going to go there. I love Brooks Brothers. And so on the spot, I'm thinking, this is my angle. I said, I'm a Jose Bank guy. What's your shirt size? I want to send you a shirt. And you could tell he takes a step back. Like, this guy got a man crush on me. Like, weird question to ask another man within 2 minutes of meeting. Like, what's your shirt size?
Right.
Yeah, but Cameron was kind, kind of that aw shucks Canadian charm. He's like, he told me. So long story short is I ended up going to Brooks Brothers. And before he got in, and I bought everything in the new fall collection, all the jackets, suits, belts, pants, shoes, you name it. And in his size. And I'm praying to God that my Amex goes through because it's over $7,000. It's the biggest charge of anything I've ever done. My business partner told me is if this doesn't work, it's all coming out of your personal draw. He thought it was a horrible idea. So Cameron's flight's delayed. He gets in. You can tell he doesn't want to go to dinner or ball game. He wants to go to bed. He goes up to his room and sees his room decorated like the Brooks Brothers. Jackets, suits, belts, pants. He comes down. His eyes are this big. He said, John, I fly to Dubai, and like coach the Sheikh of Qatar. And I get wined and dined all the time. It's like, I've never had anybody that's made me feel the way you made me feel. Whatever you want to talk about for as long as you want to talk about it. So we didn't talk anything business. I just was like sitting at his feet, just talking to him. I didn't ask him for anything. And then after that, I continued to build that relationship. I poured over the course of a decade, probably 25 grand into that relationship, and full night, $12,000 Cutco set and wine tools, whatever else. And people are like, dude, why did you keep loving on that relationship? You already had them at the Brooks Brothers. And I said, when you show up for a relationship repetitively, consistently, over and over again, not because you had to, but because you wanted to, that's where the relationship really flourishes. And you take somebody from being passively loyal to being actively loyal. So if I wanted to get Cameron as a sales rep for a year, it cost me $2 million and he'd still say no. But because I loved on him and inspired him, he became my unpaid sales rep, and all of his clients, anytime I wanted to, like when I was begging to speak for free, my first 5, 10, 15, 20, $25,000 speaking gigs, $50,000, all came from Cameron. When he was double booked, he'd be like, you got to book John Ruhlin. Before I had a book, they were like, who's John Ruhlin? And he's like, just trust me. And so he became my agent. And I did the math. Like if you look at return on investment, that's one thing. Return on relationship destroys ROI.
Totally.
The ROR of that has been over 50x. Show me in your business where you can invest $1 and get $50 back out. It's only through relationships.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah. Now, before I ask my last two questions, let me ask you, when did the book idea came? Is because you were already speaking and people were telling you need to have a book? What was the rationale with that?
I was doing a little bit of speaking. It wasn't going anywhere. And people wouldn't take the idea seriously. And I didn't want to travel, 200 days a year. I wanted the idea to spread, whether they came to our agency and we did it for them on the gifting side, or whether they decided to go be radically generous on their own. I just wanted to get the idea out, drive credibility, be the first in the space, because there's a lot of leadership books, there's a lot of marketing books. Using gratitude and generosity to grow relationships and revenue, like there's none. There, at least at the time, there was none. And so it was like, if you really want to take the speaking thing seriously, if you really want to be a consultant, if you really want to have impact globally and not be on the road 365 days, you need something that goes before you, provides air cover, credibility, and can go places you can't go. And so, I talked about writing a book for 10 years because Hal Elrod from Miracle Morning is one of my 20-year best friends, and all these people were writing books and having amazing success. And eventually my partner, we worked with, it used to be called Book in a Box, now Scribe. And once you sign the check for, 25, 30, 35 grand, whatever it is now, it's amazing how all of a sudden it becomes a priority. And you're like, okay, the book's going to get done. And 6 months later, we had the book out because they held our feet to the fire. And my business partner was like, dude, we're not cutting a check for 30 grand and not finishing this thing. Like it was done in 6 months. But that it's amazing. Like, we've sold 110,000 copies in the last 6 years, and it's changed everything. Like speaking fees, even clients I've had for 15 years treat our advice and our consulting differently, even though they've heard it 100 times. When they read it in the book, amazing. One time they're quoting it back to me like it's the first time they've heard it. It's annoying and it pisses you off, but it's also amazing how powerful a good book can be. So it's a game changer for us.
Amazing. Like two last questions, John, because I know you're extremely busy. And again, I appreciate you taking the time today. We're coming out of probably the two most challenging years that we've had. Hopefully nothing's going to get worse in the world.
Yeah.
What is your take on relationship? A lot of people lost their job. A lot of people change their job. A lot of people are working from home, difficult to reach. Did your approach and your advice to your client change now after 2 years in the pandemic?
Well, I think that anytime something bad happens, you find out who really has your back and who's in your corner. So I think that, but that's not pandemic specific. I think that's humanity specific. When things are good, everybody wants to celebrate. It's like when you're in the valley and your back's against the wall, you find out who, and you find out, did you dig your well before you're thirsty? Have you made the investments in the relationships? I think that people realize how much they were traveling, and some people have gone back to that level of travel, and other people are like, you know what? It's not worth, I don't want to be away from my family, or I can work remotely, or my balance is different. So I think people's priorities in some cases have shifted. But I at a core level, like humans are humans. Yeah, some of our habits and behaviors change a little bit, but a lot of it, like Peloton's a great example. Like everybody thought, oh, everybody's going to work at home or work out at home and never go back to the gym. But as humans, we crave connection. We crave being physical. And yes, sometimes I would much rather do a virtual than travel and be away from my family. But I still enjoy once or twice a month going and being on a big stage and shaking hands and signing books and whatever else. I just might not do it as much as I did before because of the shift and the realization that I can still have impact from afar. So I think there's shifts, but I also think there's still some core anchor points. We've been able to leverage the physical gifts, and instead of always flying to somebody, I can send a love bomb to somebody from afar and not have to jump on a plane. Is it the same as being face-to-face and us hanging out? No. But is it a good secondary option that can deepen the relationship? Yes. So I think that the last 2 years have proven out that what we do matters, but also that like the human-to-human connection is still more important than ever.
Amen to that. Awesome. My last question, and I'm sure you know what I'm going to ask you because we have to come full circle with Jason, EO, and MMT and everything.
Yeah.
When we meet in 1 year with a bottle of champagne, what are we going to be celebrating?
We'll be celebrating at least the structure and the title and the launch plan of the next book. So Giftology, I committed to a 5-year launch plan and followed through on it. 6 years, it'll be in June. But I'm realizing that the title Giftology makes people think of gifting and not relationships. And so the next book will be around really the core of what Giftology is, which is loving on relationships. And how do you do that thoughtfully and strategically at scale? That's the core of the next book.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Thank you so much for your time. Can't wait to see you again. And again, thank you for everything you're doing and for taking the time sharing those insights. It's always inspiring and a lot of energy, energizing listening to you.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
John, thank you again very much for taking the time to speak with me. Love your ideas, love focusing on the inner circle, the long term, creating absolutely unique memories that people talked about. Phenomenal. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to connect with me, please go on LinkedIn or join my Facebook group, www.eventbusinessformula.com/group. And if you enjoy this episode, please share it with your network. Thank you. Bye-bye.